Almost. There we are. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty. And today we are very happy to have Mr. Christopher Tang here with us from DriveThruRPG. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Yeah. And that is a lovely screen you have up, I must say.
Yes, that is to protect you from my messy living room.
No worries. I wish I had a similar screen right now. You wouldn't have to look at all this back here. So
right, you won't have to look to my overcrowded shelves and all my miniature painting supplies that are out right now.
You know, it's funny because usually we spend a good 5 minutes of any podcast talking about what's behind somebody's head. Like, oh, hey, look at that graphic novel. I got that one. So, and speaking the stuff below people's head, the guy directly below the two swords and stick is Walt Rebelliard. How you doing, Walt?
Two swords and stick. Don't Google that, whatever you do.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Walt. I know it was a rough weekend for you.
The worst part is the whole allergy thing. You know, I look like a snot zombie until I've managed to get my allergy meds in. So
yeah, I've been riding the Claritin train myself.
Oh my God, it's brutal. And of course, I am jealous because once again, I am the only person without symmetrical, very well-groomed facial hair, and it's just, I feel like I'm letting you down, Mike.
There's still time, Walt.
You're not gonna have a pandemic beard.
No, well, here's the thing. I mean, my family's mostly from the Mediterranean, so when these allergy meds don't work and I sneeze real hard, I'll have tons of facial hair I can groom. It just so.
Well.
Then I look like a Bond villain. So what are we talking about today?
Every once in a while, DriveThruRPG is kind enough to tolerate our shenanigans and come on the podcast to give us an update about what's going on with them. And so, Chris, we were doing some pre-show chatter. It sounds like maybe the first thing we should make sure to mention is the Shelter and Play charity bundle.
So we just had an official charity bundle and very successful. Raised a lot of money for charity, which was great. But still up, we have this is more driven by publishers at this time. They organized it, which was really fantastic. We just helped facilitate a great idea that people were already getting together. So this is Shelter and Play, and it's a charity bundle. You go in, the money goes to Child's Play and one other charity, which of course was
I think it's Extra Life. I got it here.
Extra Life and Child's Play. Yeah. So the money's going there. If you look at it, you buy the standard anchor product, and then you can get the rest of the bundle. And the bundle has some really fantastic stuff for a wide variety of different publishers. Just some really good stuff in there, and it supports a good cause.
Yep, just $10 over $200 in games, and got as we said, some of the bigger names. Onyx Path is on there.
Yes.
So, and I just found the product that lists all those. That was the anchor product we were looking at. Hang on a second. Let me just.
Right, the actual bundle.
The actual bundle. That might be more interesting. All right, and here we go. Boom. Technology. All right. So all kinds of cool stuff. I know the guy who made this. That's from. Okay, yeah.
So not only do you have some of the bigger names, you have some really nice hidden gems in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a Dracula game. I want to say, I forget, I don't want to misspeak, but this guy made this with his two little girls. Chris Sims from Paizo made this.
Yes.
Dracula. I'm saying that wrong.
I think it's Draculola.
Thank you, sir. All right. So yeah, all kinds of cool stuff. It's for a great cause. Only $10 for $200. Oh, hey, Pugmire's on there. Pugmire's fun.
Goblin. We got the Pugmire jump starts in there. Goblin Quest is so much fun.
Goblin Quest is ridiculous. I had Grant Howard on just a couple days ago. The dev for that. That's a great. Wow, this is a really good deal. So check it out, folks. And you've got a few more days. Do we know how long?
I think they're basically keeping it up as long as people are willing to try to raise, because all the money is for charity. Mm-hmm. So they're just trying to keep it up as long as they can to help folks out, as long as people are still buying it, basically. That being said, if people start saying they need to pull out, that may happen, but it's up for a little while, definitely. But go get it because it's not forever.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll have the link for this in the show notes, but go check it out now. If you just search for Shelter and Play on DTRPG, it comes right up. So, all right, cool. We wanted to mention, let's see, this isn't exactly new news, but it's since we're a podcast that's says we're focused on superhero games. We should definitely talk about it. Champions now has a community content program. Can you tell us about
the
that?
Hall of Champions. So this is a lot like our other community content programs, which longtime listeners will remember from the conversation that the BAMF podcast had with my colleague Meredith Gerber the last time she was on. She mentioned Storyteller's Vault and DM's Guild, but now we have the classic Champions role-playing game. You know, what for many people, their first superhero role-playing game, and you can create and sell your own Champions products. And let me tell you, I knew there were a lot of fan content of Champions products out there. I didn't quite realize how many and what level of quality they were until we got this launched. And all of a sudden, all of these things popped up. It's been really amazing.
Yeah, the Champions has a serious fan base, and they're dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I played some Champions back in college. It was a lot of fun.
Indeed. All right, cool.
So who are you seeing mostly? Like, what products are you seeing mostly with the Hall of Champions? Are they for, like, I know a lot of people even today are still rabid fans of 4th edition. Are you seeing mostly one edition over another, or it's the stuff that's being published now with 6th edition, I believe it is?
6th edition, of course, being a new edition, you're going to see a little bit less stuff of that because people are still, kind of playing around with it, still trying to figure it out. I think we're seeing a lot of various different older editions, in part because what we're seeing is people taking a lot of their homebrew, people taking a lot of stuff that they may have published as fan stuff and saying, hey, if I put a little more polish on this, I could actually publish this.
It looks like you can use Champions Now rules as well, which is kind of a
yes.
alternate evolution path coming off of 3rd edition.
Yes, more of a streamlined system, but we each have our own favorite editions. That's how it works, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Well, that is good information. And speaking of community content programs, I guess there's not a link for this one, but
not yet.
Fabulously popular kids RPG, HeroKids, is why don't I just let you set it up, Chris?
Yeah. So especially as a parent, I'm very familiar with HeroKids. It was actually the first role-playing game that I introduced my son to.
Oh, nice. How old's your kid?
Well, now he's 11.
Okay.
We started role-playing with him when he was 6, though.
Cool.
That's awesome.
It's a simple enough system that you can play with kids as young as 6. Now, HeroKids has always had a bit of a licensing allowance. So one of the early, really popular settings for HeroKids was SuperKids. Well, starting last year, we started having a community content for HeroKids, but because HeroKids was a separate publisher, SuperKids wasn't part of it. But we are, within the next month or so, going to be launching SuperKids as part of community content. So I recommend going out and buying a copy now so that you can start playing superhero stuff with your kids and start writing stuff so that when this launches, you'll be able to publish your own SuperKids setting.
Cool. That is good news. We should have Conrad. I don't think we've had Conrad on in a few years. We should have him on to talk about this. This is a cool little product. So, all right. Nice.
Double dog dare you.
One day, I promise. Okay. And, well, I hate to keep saying the same thing over and over, but speaking of community content,
yes.
And this is
like your Silver Surfer segue.
My Silver Surfer. I can do a segue without saying, and now I'm changing the subject, and that doesn't happen very often. So I kind of like it. You can do it gracefully. It's nice.
Meanwhile, back at the Xavier's mansion.
Yes. Oh, I love the 1950s radio voice. Awesome.
So, Tristat system.
Yes.
We are going to have a community content program for that.
Yes. Working on launching early June. So for those of you who are listening to this is very soon. This is a scoop for the BAMF podcast.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Recently, Big Eyes, Small Mouth, 4th edition came out. The 4th edition updated the rules. And as part of that, very soon we're going to be launching on DTRPG the Big Eyes, Small Mouth community content. It's going to be called the Tristat Emporium. For those of you who remember all of that, Tristat is what the system of Big Eyes, Small Mouth is called. Much like, D&D is often called D20, but then put into different systems. But in the Tristat Emporium is going to be Silver Age Sentinels.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Right. So it's a return of a superhero game that, yeah, as far as I know, I still have friends that Silver Age Sentinels is still their favorite superhero RPG.
Yeah, it was very popular back in the day.
Yes.
That's kind of amazing. Is there going to be a new edition of that coming out with this program?
Well, let me say that if I know, I can't say.
Oh.
There are some things where, and maybe it will, maybe it won't. The problem is if I say yes or no, people assume I know things when I usually don't. Let's just say that to my best of my knowledge, no, but that doesn't mean I have an inside track, whereas some people assume I do.
All right.
But that doesn't mean it's not in the works. I don't want to get emailed from the folks working and be like, why didn't you tell them we're working on it? I'm like, because you didn't tell me.
I think you have thoroughly obfuscated there. I'm not even clear what we're talking about anymore. So I think you're in the clear legally there, Christopher.
Superheroes.
Superheroes, yay! All right.
So, do you have a Christopher? Do you have a favorite superhero RPG that you guys play regularly, or do you play superhero RPGs regularly?
I do. I do not currently, but my current group that meets every couple weeks to play 7th Sea, we not too long ago wrapped up a Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition campaign.
Oh, nice.
I've played Champions in the past. I mentioned that. I ran Marvel Heroic for a couple years. Actually,
right on.
Early in the dating days with my wife, we still have stories about that campaign. One of the which has led to one of the tricks, which is part of why I don't necessarily run in official Marvel Universe anymore.
What happened there?
Oh, well, you see, what would happen is if the players were starting to get stumped or feeling like they weren't quite sure what to do, they would ask me a question, and it was usually something along the lines of, wait, Chris, has my character ever met this character in continuity, this villain, or anything similar to this? And I would start saying, well, you see, in the 60s, but, blah, 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 blah. And I would just start ranting about, like what happened when Emma Frost first met the X-Men. And it's like, well, actually, she first appeared trying to recruit Kitty Pryde before she was a villain. And then they would sit there quietly listening to me, or at least appearing to, and they would text each other. They're like, oh, God, what are we going to do about this? Like, should you attack? Should I do this? And then, like, by the time I would finish ranting, they would have a plan.
That's not a bad timer to prod your players into action. I know some people use an hourglass for that, but no, that's cool. I say you do have a good grip on a lot of voices, too. You should be in radio, sir.
I actually have done professional voice acting.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Walt does voiceover work as well. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have a face built for radio, so I have to go with my talents as they lie.
I'm in the same boat with you, sir.
Oh, it's all good. We keep good company. So if you wanted to grab like some spotlights on a couple of products that caught your eye in the last few weeks since we've been all quarantined. I know everybody's looking for something to play or something to do while, twiddling their thumbs or, wondering about, will there be a revolt? Will there not be a revolt? Where was my next scrap of toilet paper coming from? What games have caught your eye over the last few weeks?
In terms of new releases,
anything. What when you bring up the DriveThruRPG interface, right? What do you scroll through and say? No, got it, bought it, maybe want it. Ooh.
Well,
what's that ooh for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the way I often describe it is, I drink from the DriveThruRPG fire hose.
So there's an employee discount.
Well, there is, but technically no, but I have to see everything that comes through, and with many of the new products, I review them to make sure that it's not somebody accidentally, uploading their work manual instead of their actual role-playing game, which has happened. Like, oh, that's your employee agreement. That's not a Cave of Goblins. Could you please resubmit? people misclick, things happen. You know, don't assume ill intent when that sort of thing happens. But what is that ooh factor for me? And let's talk a little bit about pandemic gaming, right? I think a lot of people, including myself, are doing a lot of remote calls, Zoom calls, virtual tabletop. And I think for some virtual tabletops, they make sense. For me, as somebody who does a lot of homebrew and not necessarily a lot of module running, I can't just go in and get like a module pack that makes sense for whatever is in my head. And I know for some people, that I'm not no knock against people who are like, I'm going to run, Ravenloft. I'm like, great, and you can go out and buy a big Ravenloft pack of maps, and that's fantastic. Get some custom stuff on DM's Guild, fantastic. More power to you. For me, I like a little more theater of the mind, which has worked out pretty well for me. So games where there's not as much miniatures, so I don't have to get like 20 different. I have a lot of physical miniatures, but where I don't have to find virtual tabletop assets are what's better for me. So, I quite like a lot of things. I guess what I'll really say is just what am I running and playing right now?
Yeah, please, that'd be great.
Yeah. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is a continuation of games I was doing before the quarantine, but the kind of games I was running have worked out pretty well so far. I'm running 7th Sea 2nd edition. We just sort of trust everyone with their handful of 10-sided dice. I'm running, I guess this is a relatively new campaign, but I've run the system for my son before. This is our home, my wife and my son playing through. We're actually playing a game called Index Card RPG. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
That's by Roothammer, right?
Right. So we're playing the fantasy version of that, though we are eyeing, for those of you superhero fans out there, we are eyeing, after we finish this current fantasy adventure, maybe touching down on Vigilante City.
Oh, yeah. I've actually released some products for that. That's a cool thing.
Yeah. So that's something that's very exciting. With another group, my wife is actually running Blades in the Dark.
Oh, no kidding.
Nice.
Yeah, Blades in the Dark is one of those slick RPGs that like have that niche following. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to pull a heist, it's really good. I've actually run in the past a campaign of Scum and Villainy, which is the Han Solo and Chewie version of that. Although
Right
in the actual game, like we realized once we got into it, we were actually way more Cowboy Bebop than we were. Like there were just some really goofy moments.
Right on.
Like the way, but then snapping back to serious the way they would in Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, there's a Twitter camp. Well, I said I wasn't going to talk about Twitter, but there's a Make Solo 2 Happen. It was trending this morning.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got its fans. It's it's not the most beloved Star Wars movie, but I would say it's better than a lot of them out there. So yeah.
I mean, it wasn't my top Star Wars movie ever, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't regret going to the movies.
And I cannot always say that when I go to a Star Wars movie. So yeah, I had a good time.
Maybe I'm too uncritical as a fan. I'm generally pretty happy when I go to a Star Wars movie. I have some I like better than others.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy who complains about Star Wars on a podcast. Sorry.
Fair enough. So we'll just say Scum and Villainy is really good.
Yeah. I think 40% of all podcast content these days is chubby white guys complaining about Star Wars. So I don't want to add to that problem. But I will say the prequels just require more drinking for me before I can watch them. I can enjoy Phantom Menace just fine. It's 3 glasses of wine.
For me, since I have a child,
Mm-hmm.
Phantom Menace is a different experience.
I've been holding off on showing my 7-year-old that movie for that reason, because I don't want him to just discover Jar Jar and decide he likes Jar Jar.
Play it ad nauseum.
Yeah. I've been nervous about that. Has that been a problem for you, Christopher?
Not really.
All right, cool. Well, maybe
my son likes the more dangerous characters. He's more of a Darth Vader fan than a Jar Jar fan.
Nice. I can understand that. That's cool. That's actually who my kid was for Halloween this last year. So
nice.
Was Darth Vader, not Jar Jar?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned pandemic gaming is a thing, and we know that DriveThruRPG has a pretty cool collaboration with Astro VTT.
Yes.
Is that the tabletop that you're using when you're using a virtual, or do you guys like hit Discord and go Theater of the Mind?
So most of my gaming that I'm doing regularly, I'm doing more Theater of the Mind. I have, I should have mentioned this, but we actually do have a work game that just started up as part of Pandemic Gaming.
Oh, really?
That is on Astro, but I'm not running it, so I forgot to mention it. So that's been fun. The guy who is running that from within the house, he's and it's not like we're not even testing Astro; we're just playing.
Right on.
But he has a really good. He's one of those guys who was doing a lot of virtual tabletop before all this, so he's got a nicely curated set of virtual tabletop assets. Like when he wants a skeleton, he just pulls it out. He knows he's got it. He knows where it is. And that's been fun. I did run a one-shot on Astral personally since all this started to introduce some people to Index Card RPG. Though we ran
nice.
their science fiction setting. We did exploring a spaceship. So that was really nice.
Yeah, we had the Astro folks on a few months ago. They were very charming, and it sounds like that's really kind of taken off. So something to check out in the future.
Yeah, they've added a whole bunch of different effects and made it a little more streamlined than it was when they first kicked up. So
yeah, it's always getting better. I'm always just so impressed by the work and how fast they turn around and their responsiveness to the community. Another thing that I love seeing as somebody who, whereas Meredith, I'm not sure if she mentioned this when she was on, but she's more the top publishers. There's a few of them that I take care of, but I take care of all the weird little indie guys.
Yay!
Yay! and I love, don't get me wrong, I love some mainstream gaming. I'll play some D&D. If you're like, Chris, let's play some D&D, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. But I also love my weird little niche games about being a sad alien. And one of the great things that we've started to see with Astral, and this is one of the great things with the DriveThru partnership, is we've seen Astral put out more of the tools for people to create character sheets. So what we have is we have some really creative, really talented people in the community making character sheets. And then we can see that. And then we as DriveThru, with our existing relationships with publishers, can approach them and say, can we release this officially? Can we just say this is an official character sheet for this game on Astro? And, let that, relationship help smooth things out so that people can, and it's, for character sheets, I don't think anyone's ever said no because it's a character sheet. They just want to make sure it's presented properly. They don't want a bad representation of their game.
Right on.
So if I was to say I'm a guy who hears this on the podcast, I'm like, God damn, I want to go find some VTT character sheets on DriveThru. I would see product type, go to maps and play aids, then click on virtual tabletop, and that's where I'm going to find all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. News you can use here on the BAMF podcast. And
so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please. After you, sir.
I was going to say you were saying earlier that your amazing screen is hiding the wealth of miniatures behind you. Do you play like miniatures wargaming, or do you just use them in your role playing games?
It's painting is something I've gotten back into after a long absence, and all it took was a global crisis for me to crack into my collection again. But I use it primarily for role playing. But something I've been doing since all this started that I didn't really do back 15 years ago before I got married and child and all that. And suddenly in the beginnings of my first career took all of my time. One thing I've been doing lately is I've actually been painting my board game miniatures to sort of enhance that board game experience.
Oh, wow. Stuff like Space Hulk and oh God. What's the fantasy one?
I just finally painted Talisman.
There you go.
So that's that. Next up, I was actually a Kickstarter backer for Tang Garden because I'm Chris Tang, so I kind of had to. I'm like contractually obligated to back that game. So that's probably next, and then after that, probably Rising Sun. But in the middle of there, I've painted miniatures for the D&D game that I'm running for my wife and my son, the Index Card RPG game. They have personally painted miniatures. So that's been
cool.
great. It's been a good way to spend my time.
I gotta tell you, I mean, even as like a old broken down warhorse, sitting down at a table and have somebody, drop a miniature in front of you and say, "Hey, man, I got this for you and I painted it. Here you go." Suddenly you're an 8-year-old all over again.
Oh yeah, you're just it's a toy box. You're playing with toys, and it's just like, yeah, that's my guy. not the lump of red glass we were using last time.
Yeah, poker chips and checkers.
Maybe a Monopoly piece.
Definitely gets the enthusiasm up. Hey, speaking of cool new stuff, iPhone PDFs are a thing, and publishers are putting out more. I see we have masks out as an iPhone PDF. How are those going for you guys?
They're doing pretty well. We're very happy with it. One of the things, you don't have a ton of publishers doing them yet, but everyone who's doing it will talk to us about the great feedback they're getting from fans. How fans talk about how great it is to have this resource and have something they can just reference at the table. Oddly enough, we've been hearing a little anecdotally about it with Zoom.
Really? Really? So people having their phone up during the call?
Right. Well, because, not everybody has like a dual screen with their computer or a laptop. So they can actually keep the Zoom up of seeing their friends' faces and reference the book on their phone in their hand.
So here's a question. These are obviously formatted for a roughly 3x4 or maybe even a 3/8, 4/6 screen.
Mm-hmm.
How does it look on a tablet?
I actually kind of love it on the tablet.
Really?
I am somebody who does a lot of ebook reading.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as it's like, if I had a novel, I want more words per page because I'm grinding line by line. But when I'm using a rule book, when I'm using a role-playing book as a reference, as opposed to reading it for the fiction and the setting and whatnot, like just having here's like giant text of the rule. Here's exactly the section, the one paragraph you need that you can, because it's larger letters, easy to just read through it. Just to, laser focus on that has been really great.
Right on. And for people who don't know, what makes these PDFs ideal for phones and tablets?
Well, part of it is their size. I was just talking about the size of the text, which is going to change. When you have a regular size PDF that is maybe, expected to be on a computer or a tablet, and you have it on your phone, there's a lot of pinching and squeezing and expanding and moving all around trying to find the text. But with a phone PDF, it's optimized so that you don't have to do that. So the amount of text on your screen is readable. Also, they are, the way of the future with PDFs definitely is more hyperlinking and more, click on something in the index, go to the section. Phone PDFs are much more heavily hyperlinked and optimized for use. So just if a rule is referenced, click on it, go to that section.
Nice. All right, cool. Good to know that's taken off. And I have hit all the subjects we had talked about in our pre-show about things we wanted to hit. Do we have any closing thoughts or things we want to make sure we touch on before we call the show?
I guess that depends on whether or not you feel like you missed out on talking about stuff behind me, and you want me to go get a conversation piece.
Dude, go grab one conversation piece. That'd be
one
cool.
Conversation piece. All right.
Yes. Let's see. I'm kind of interested now. I mean, he's got that giant blue screen. What would be funny is if he came back to the screen and started dancing in front of the light, so that we see his silhouette or something like that.
How you doing, Walter? You okay?
You don't want to see me dance.
I'm getting caffeinated.
Okay.
You definitely don't want to see me dance.
Right,
so this is one of the things
One second.
Yeah, put him large. There we go.
There you go.
All right. So here we have a sketchbook that anyone might purchase at your bookstore. Yeah. Well, fortunately, I've never drawn anything in this sketchbook. But like many comic fans, have taken this sketchbook to a handful of conventions with me and paid artists to do sketches of one of my favorite comic book characters ever, which is Nightcrawler. So as long as we're on the BAMF podcast.
Oh, nice.
That's a beautiful tie-in. Thank you, sir. Nice.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
There is Kurt himself. All right.
So we've got, here's probably the most expensive, George's Giante.
That's fantastic.
And then I think this is the, no, it's not the last one. We'll just, so we've got
Chibi Nightcrawler.
Yeah, I always tell them, if you're willing to draw Nightcrawler, draw Nightcrawler, and feel free to do your own personal style.
Oh, that's tight.
And do the way you want to do it. And
I take it you're a fan of the character.
I love Nightcrawler. So I was like, go
ahead.
Yeah, if we're on the BAMF podcast, I should probably consider that, pulling that out. And once you talked about talking about things behind people, I'm like, I should have just had that on my desk when this started.
Nice. That made my day. That was beautiful, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, really appreciate your time. Appreciate when you guys from DTRPG can come around and give us some news. Let us know what's going on. Really appreciate that, sir.
Absolutely.
And to all our listeners and viewers out there for the BAMF podcast, tomorrow at Walt, is it 1 p.m.?
What, Eastern or your time?
I don't care, whichever.
Hold on. Let me get my optimized phone calendar.
Okay. It is 4 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Mountain. We'll be playing Valor Knights from Bloat Games here on the BAMF podcast. So we do it's called our 45-minute lunchtime beat 'em up. And so if you're a fan of cheesy jokes, nostalgia, or robots who are also vehicles, come back tomorrow and check it out. It's always a good time.
We are big on the cheese.
We're big on the cheese. We just embrace the cheese. So, all right, cool. Chris, thanks again for your time, and we will see everybody next time on the BAMF podcast.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate it. And there's an awkward moment I hit end broadcast before we're actually off the broadcast.